two things, Hank, that you said to me have stuck with me. Number one, and I understand it now after reading your book, you said President Bush was a great leader and how he helped you through that. And number two, you and I talked a little bit about the emotional impact it had clearly on you and also on me. If you would just talk about leadership from the president and then a little bit about the emotional impact.
John, thank you. Let me first say to everybody, I'm just delighted to be here at NYU, just delighted to be here. And secondly, you've heard me say it a lot, but you were a really strong leader during the crisis, and boy, it tested all of us. Now, in terms of the president, and I think those of you who've read the book could see this on a second-hand basis. And it disappoints some of those who want to believe a caricature of George Bush, which is not attractive. The president was engaged, understood the markets, and what impressed me about him all the way through the crisis was that this is a man who's not a fan of Wall Street, not a fan of the GSEs, is someone who clearly didn't go to Washington to bail out banks, but he understood how important it was to our economy and to jobs to do what needed to be done. And so he was engaged, he was encouraging, and rather than making life difficult for me, he was very supportive. And one of the things that John and I had talked about was that when a Treasury Secretary goes to Washington, you can have any agreement with the president. And I'd worked to make sure we had an understanding that I would be the primary advisor and spokesman on domestic and international economic issues. But if I didn't have a relationship with the president, he didn't trust me, that agreement meant nothing. And I had a year, I was very fortunate before the crisis, for us to get to know each other, for him to understand that I'm pretty direct behind closed doors, but that publicly there wouldn't be daylight between us and so on. Now, the other thing which I appreciated a lot was he rather than making life difficult, he encouraged and bucked me up, and there were times when he practically mothered me, to get me through this. Now, secondly, which has to do with the emotional response, I think John and I were talking about the most stressful occasions, and it's whether you're managing a firm on the brink or an economy on the brink, or the anxiety that goes with all of the uncertainty, and particularly when you don't have all many things are beyond your control. And so it is, and then understanding if you're running a firm and you just realize what happens if the firm collapses and what it means to all the lives you affect within that company. And if you're a Treasury Secretary who's run one of those banks, you understand that. And you also understand what it means to the country and to the American people. And we were going through a period where I very much believed then, and I believe now, that if we'd had one other major firm go down after Lehman Brothers, it would have taken down the rest, and we would have gone into something that with unemployment, I think, equal to what we had in the Great Depression. And so the anxiety I felt was, I certainly didn't want to be presiding over an economy, be Treasury Secretary when everything collapsed and we went into another depression. But these were very emotional times. In addition, it wasn't just looking at numbers and making tough, cold decisions. It was knowing what the human impact would be.